Hello, my name is Ayo Adedoyin. I have the privilege of leading the International Organization for Peace Building and Social Justice here in the UK. In March of the indeed privilege to join with Baroness Caroline Cox, who is our chair for this meeting this evening, and a delegation of others who you will be hearing from over this next hour to visit central Nigeria. And today's meeting is an opportunity for that delegation to bring a report back to you, bring a report back to the Nigerian diaspora, the friends of Nigeria around the world on that trip. Thank you once again for joining us over the course of this meeting. You will have questions, I have no doubt. Can I ask you to drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll group them together and try and take as many of them on this call. And if there's any that we do not manage to get to for any reason, we will find other opportunities to get answers to those questions as well. It was a real privilege to be on the ground in Nigeria's Middle Belt. I give my profound appreciation to Baroness Caroline Cox for leading that delegation. And I'm now going to hand over to her to basically chair and take over the first segment of our meeting this evening. Caroline, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo, for your kind introduction, and thank everyone on this Zoom call for taking time out of your busy schedules to join this important meeting. By way of introduction, all I have to say about myself is that I'm a nurse and a social scientist by intention and a baroness by astonishment. I wasn't into politics. I was the first baroness I'd ever met. But soon after I was appointed to the House of Lords, it quickly occurred to me, it's a great privilege to speak in Parliament and an ideal place to be a voice for suffering people whose voices are not heard. And it's within this context that I established an international development charity called Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust, or HART. And for over 18 years, HART has worked with local partners to deliver life-saving aid, to provide life-changing education, and to celebrate local people's visions for a brighter future for their own people. This includes support for displaced communities in Nigeria's Middle Belt, who are in urgent need of protection and education. And that's why I'm so grateful that you have joined our meeting this evening, because it's my sincere hope that by working together, we can accomplish 4 urgent priorities. 1, we will shine a light on the unfolding crisis in central Nigeria. 2, we will show solidarity with the millions of displaced people who are neglected by the world's major aid organizations and ignored by the international media. 3, we will apply pressure on our governments to prevent the murderous attacks on innocent civilians and to provide desperately needed aid. And 4th, we will join forces to celebrate the local people's vision for a brighter future. And Ayo will provide more information about some specific calls to action later. For myself, I visited Nigeria more than 20 times in areas afflicted by violence, including Kano, Bauchi, Southern Kaduna, and Plateau states. In March this year, I visited villages in Plateau and Kaduna to hear first-hand accounts of recent terrorist attacks. In over 15 years, this was the first time I had to fly from Abuja to Jos rather than traveling by road because of increased frequency of killings and kidnappings. We shared the findings of our visit in a special report called Breaking Point in Central Nigeria, Terror and Mass Displacement in the Middle Belt, and that is free to access and easy to find online. Why does our report focus this time on the Middle Belt? The answer is simple. Thousands of innocent civilians have been killed and millions are displaced, yet they receive almost no help from the Nigerian government or from the international community. HART's local hero partner, Reverend Canon Hassan John, is a frontline reporter. He's visited countless villages across central Nigeria to deliver aid and to keep a careful record of atrocities. He told me recently, and I quote his words, "I can say categorically that none of these villages have received security or humanitarian assistance from the government of Nigeria or elsewhere. They're forced to rely on aid from local churches or small NGOs, or they receive no aid at all." Such a minimal response from the Nigerian government and the international community is woefully inadequate, and it doesn't reflect the urgency of the humanitarian and security crises. Here in the United Kingdom, we often hear about deadly attacks by Boko Haram and Islamic State in northern Nigeria. Many attacks have garnered a great deal of international attention, which has rightly resulted in vast sums of aid being directed to the north. Yet the conflict in the Middle Belt region has received much less attention, even though it's no less deadly and no less crucial for Nigeria's future. At heart, PSJ and CSI, we receive almost daily reports from central Nigeria of organized and systematic attacks by Islamist Fulani militia against Christian farming communities. I need just to emphasize, I'm not speaking here about Fulani in general, who are a diverse group of more than 20 million people with hundreds of clans. I'm referring specifically to well-armed groups composed of men of Fulani ethnicity who carry out attacks in the Middle Belt. They are distinct from the so-called Fulani bandits in the northwest, who mainly attack Hausa Muslim communities. These Islamist Fulani are also distinct from the Fulani in the northeast, many of whom are themselves victims of attacks by Boko Haram. The focus of our report is Islamist Fulani militia who attack in large numbers across the Middle Belt. Armed with automatic weapons, machetes, petrol bombs, they destroy homes, farmland, churches, orphanages. Such as this orphanage in Jebu, Miango Plateau State, where 8 buildings were destroyed by Islamist Fulani militia, including the chapel, which is now abandoned. And this home in Atakma Way village in Zagon Qatar, which was attacked twice in recent memory, in August last year and again in January this year. The perpetrators of these attacks often assert their right to land by settling their cattle, renaming the village, and threatening anyone who seeks to return. Nigerian human rights groups estimate that between 13 and 19,000 killings have occurred since 2009, with countless others suffering life-changing injuries. The violence has displaced millions and appears designed to reduce the number of indigenous Christians in the region. Inasmuch as the attacks are intended to destroy ethno-religious communities, we are very concerned that the attacks may rise to the level of ethnic cleansing or even genocide. Indeed, 2 years ago, the United Kingdom All-Party Parliamentary Group for International Freedom, Religious Freedom or Belief, which I co-chair, asked this very question: is a genocide unfolding in Nigeria? And I'd strongly encourage you to seek out this report online. Sadly, we don't hear about these killings in the British or American media, despite the fact that violence has escalated to unprecedented levels. I have personally witnessed the aftermath of attacks by Islamist Fulani militia. I've seen the ruins of homes, farmland, food stores, churches, pastor homes, clinics, and schools. I've wept with people as they bury loved ones in mass graves. Several years ago in Dogonohana, a massive mass grave, to more recent killings in Kujura chiefdom, and 7 villages around Zonko, all the way to Kermin Masara in southern Kaduna, and 5 villages in Irigwe and in Miango Plateau State. During our visit in March this year, we stood at the grave of an 80-year-old woman called Sarah, who had miraculously survived an attack on her village, but was so traumatized by what she saw that she died of a heart attack. In a neighboring village, a 98-year-old woman was burned alive by Islamist Fulani militia. Before being thrown into her burning home, she was mocked by her killers who said, "You look cold, Grandma, come this way." I also heard detailed accounts of the deliberate targeting and slaughter of children and people being hacked to death with machetes as they ran from rapid gunfire. Here is a boy called Philip, now aged 8. He was asleep in his bed when he was attacked in September 2018. His father told me, I quote, "They hit him in the head with a machete. He raised his hand to block the attack, and they then hacked his hand. The attack left Philip's right eye hanging outside his skull." During a previous visit, it was my agonizing privilege to weep with and to hug Veronica from Dogon Noma. Veronica told me, and I quote her words, "They attacked me with a machete twice, once to the neck and once to my hand. I saw the scars." She said, "They then said they wanted my daughter to suck my finger. So they amputated my forefinger and I passed out. When I woke up, I saw my 6-year-old daughter on the ground, dead, with my chopped finger in her mouth." Despite the scale and nature of these murderous attacks, they rarely hit our headlines. The crisis remains out of sight of most of the world's media. Although some international aid has been given to alleviate the suffering of Nigerians in the northeastern Borno state, where Boko Haram is still very active, virtually no aid has been diverted to the Middle Belt, where over 3,000 people have been killed this year alone, 2022, and where millions are displaced from their home, and where children cannot go to school at the expense of their education. Surely their plight is deserving of our unwavering solidarity, our constant media interest, and an immediate humanitarian response. This is why our charity Heart is so committed to providing safer education among displaced communities across Nigeria, including central states. We'll watch a short video now that explains how we have achieved this through our wonderful local partners. They're the real heroes and heroines on the front lines of faith and freedom.
Across northern and central Nigeria, millions of families are displaced by insecurity and fear, including children deprived of their education. When it's unsafe for students to travel to school, our Roads to Hope van brings school to the children. The van is driven to remote villages across central Nigeria, fully equipped with pens, books, a whiteboard, an electronic monitor and a solar-powered generator. Hassan John is our local partner in the region, and here he is explaining a bit more about the van and how it provides safer education in Nigeria.
One, bringing the children who have been traumatized and have been impacted by the killings by the Fulani militia groups that have devastated more than 20 villages in this area. Now these children have been scattered, displaced, but the education van and the supplies that we've given has brought them together in one place. In other words, now we've pulled them out of the communities, out of risks, out of abuse, and they are now here sitting and receiving some teaching and bringing their attention to one place.
Because it's a 4-wheel drive, we have no fear at all getting to places where there's no road. There's one paved roads for itself, and what a great gift this is to us.
Those taking care of them and their guardians, know that their children are safe and they're receiving some attention, they're receiving some education, so that frees their mind to go and do whatever else they need to do in trying to either relocate to their villages or to rebuild those villages, and it takes time. What Heart has done is to help these communities to at least remove some anxieties, some worries, and give these children a continuity in their education. That has been beautiful.
As Hassan has explained in that video, Heart has provided safer education to thousands of displaced children in central Nigeria. I'm glad you could see the smiles on their faces when the books arrived. But since the project was launched in October last year, the education vans have reached over 25 villages in Nyango and Abasia village in Jengre. More vehicles are expected to launch in 2022, which will serve Zonkwa and nearby villages in Kara local council in southern Kaduna, reaching an additional 1,500 children every month. With your help, we hope to expand the project to include mobile health vans. And I understand that Ayo will share some vital information later about how you can show your support for these life-changing projects. As I conclude, may I say a personal message of thanks to any Nigerians who are taking part in this event, to say how much I and my colleagues in heart love and respect your people. We love you, we stand with you, and we will continue to help in any way we can. God bless you all.
Well, a massive thanks to you, Caroline. I must say that Nigeria as a country and Nigerians as a people owe you a debt of gratitude for all that you have done and continue to do for Nigeria. To have visited Nigeria continuously 20 times or more over the years at 80 with persecuted and challenged people, communities on behalf of us all. You mentioned Hassan John, and I'm going to invite Hassan to share a few words with us next. Hassan is a real life hero. He's a modern day hero. In addition to being a local partner on the ground for HEART, the Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust, he wears several hats. He's the man who was the stringer that broke the the Chibok girls story. He served as a communication director with the Anglican Church, who's running towards the is running the security in central Nigeria and in other places which we're talking about today. Hassan, I'm going to pass over to you now to just go ahead and share some of your personal thoughts and personal experiences on the ground.
Thank you so much, Ayo. Let me just add a little to underscore some of the things that the Baroness Caroline Cox has said. You see, the thing is, in central Nigeria, especially in all the villages I've been to, and I must say I've been to virtually almost every one of them, the sophistication of this attack. So here we're dealing with I don't know, people call them bandits, they call them, they give them several names, but the fact of the matter is, this is a well-organized, well-equipped groups, like in Southern Kaduna, for instance, in the attack end of last year to this year. They use night vision goggles, they use laser-guided sniper rifles. They use chemicals in the arson and the burning of communities so that even when it is raining, these villages still burn. Now, and they are well organized. They have the capacity to attack 3 or 4 or 5 villages in a radius of about 3 or 4 or 5 miles, and they carry out these attacks in the course of 3 to 4 or 5 hours, depending on which area they are attacking, and yet they're able to get away without any government intervention. Now, recently, they've expanded and have grown into many more villages that are not even within where the argument, the political correct narrative that it is a clash between farmers and herders. Now, a lot of these villages that have been attacked are not even within any grazing areas or within any herder track. So specifically, villages are handpicked, they are attacked and they are destroyed, and they have now grown into kidnapping. So in other words, villages are informed. They either pay the attacker a certain amount of money in Southern Kaduna, or else they will be attacked. And even when they gather, so these poor communities now put together monies into some 3 or 4 or 5 million, depending on how much they're able to put together. That is in Naira, and then they give it, yet they get attacked. Rape has been also put into the factor of the attacks now. So when they attack the village, they kill the men, they take as many women as possible. And of course, the idea here is to be able to adulterate that community. In other words, the women in the villages in Miango or Southern Kaduna, they have this ethical problem of whether to abort when they get pregnant, or they leave the children and they become a challenge in the society. In other words, there's a social adulteration. So it's a strategic part of the attack that we've seen most of last year into this year. So the some reports say that within this year alone, close to about 600 million naira has been paid by these poor rural communities, selling their land, selling their properties, just to bring back their loved ones. Now, let's be clear. These attacks are predominantly within Christian communities in the central region of Nigeria. This is not to say that some Muslim communities have not been attacked, but there is hardly any village you go to today that there isn't a mass grave. And I always raise the issue of where the government stands in this, because we have seen complacency in the part of the Nigerian government. We've seen collaboration by some security agencies or agents in this, and even the government that chooses to deflect, deny, and defend this massacre and this tragedy that is going on in the central region of this country. So while the government refuses to acknowledge and just says they are banded, then the narratives keep changing from one point to the other. So at one point, it will be the government claiming that these are just bandits. And then it now says, well, they probably are foreign fighters, or they are now affiliated with ISWAP or Boko Haram or Ansaru. All these are proscribed terrorist organizations, non-terrorist organizations, by the way. So we're having these issues, and yet there is a denial, even within the international community, to see this also as a religious crisis that we have in our hands. Because I promise you, the 2023 election that is coming up is going to be decided on a religious ground. The focus by these radical Islamic militia groups on the predominant Christian communities is just simply to rob them, to destroy them, and to take over their land. And like the Baroness Caroline Cox has said, the names have been changed to whatever names they choose. So unless there is a focus and an understanding to see the religion playing out in this, and by the way, from the Nigerian Civil War till today, there is no moment in time in this country between the North and South where religion has not been a factor. So I would just simply conclude by saying, unless we look at this on its merit of the level on which religion plays, and go on social media any day in Nigeria and hear the rhetoric, the hate that is spewed out by clerics against one group or the other, and then you understand the level at which we are heading. So I must say that we need to focus on the religious solution to these problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Hassan. And in addition to thanks for your comments that you're making right now, thank you for your warm hospitality. Hassan was effectively our host on the ground in central Nigeria. We will obviously be returning back to you, so there will be opportunities to field questions. And talking about questions, if you've got any questions already beginning to play on your mind, having heard Baroness Caroline speak, having heard Hassan speak so far, please go ahead and drop those into the chat box, and we're going to leave lots of time to be able to come back and deal with as many of those as we can this evening. I noticed that we have the great privilege of being joined by Fiona Bruce MP, who is the special envoy to the Prime Minister on freedom of religion and her Southgate. And it's a great pleasure to have both of you join this meeting tonight. And if you're still around a bit later on, maybe you can actually say one or two things about the FOB Ministerial Conference that's coming up in London next week. But I just want to say, in case you don't stay, thank you so massive amount of work that you're doing in pulling that conference together for people who are affected around the world. But also thank you particularly for the interest on Nigeria. I know, David Burrows, you led a delegation to Nigeria a few weeks ago, a parliamentary delegation, and thank you for all that you do. Well, next we're going to hear from a young man who is originally from the United States, but he lives in Zurich in Switzerland. It was my great pleasure to get to meet him when we went on this trip to central Nigeria. He is the head of international communications at Christian Solidarity International, CSI, and he played a massive role in capturing what it is that we saw on the ground when we were in the middle belt of Nigeria. It gives me great pleasure to hand over the floor to you, Joel Veldkamp. Over to you, Joel.
Thank you very much, Reverend Ayo. Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to represent Christian Solidarity International on this panel with two of my personal heroes, Baroness Caroline Cox and Reverend Hassan John from Heart. And I also want to thank our new friends at PSJ UK, especially the Reverend Ayo Adedoyan, our host, for organizing this important event. We've now heard from both Baroness Cox and Reverend Hassan about the terrible violence occurring in the Middle Belt. And I want to emphasize the conclusion of the joint report produced by Heart, PSJ UK, and CSI in March after our visit to the Middle Belt. These are not just random attacks. These attacks represent a coordinated effort to use terror and killing to drive the indigenous Christians of the Middle Belt out of the region. And it is working. According to our sources, 145 Christian communities in southern Kaduna have now been seized by Fulani militias and the settlers who follow them, amounting to about 10% of the land in the region. In Benue State, over 1 million Christians have been displaced by these attacks. In Plateau State as well, Fulani militias have used these attacks to seize numerous Christian villages, many of which have been renamed to erase their connection to their previous inhabitants. A classic technique of genocide. This is, in short, an organized campaign of ethnic cleansing, maybe even genocide. So what are the implications of all this for US and British policy in Nigeria? On our March trip to Nigeria, we traveled to 4 different villages in the Middle Belt that have been attacked in the last 7 months. And what struck me the most as we traveled is the Nigerian army is everywhere. On the main roads to and from each community, we encountered multiple manned checkpoints, armed vehicles, and sometimes full army bases. In Tebe village, in Plateau State, in Miango community, which was attacked last November, armed soldiers were actually there to greet us when we arrived, and to not so subtly suggest that we should leave. And yet, despite this large military presence, the ferocious attacks on Christian civilians in the Middle Belt are continuing and even intensifying. The consistent testimony of the survivors we spoke with was that when the attacks occurred, they had called the army to come help, but soldiers arrived only after the attack was finished, sometimes hours or days later. Baroness Cox mentioned that we visited the village of Atakmawe in Kaduna State. This is a small village, but not a remote one. It straddles a major road that connects the large cities of Jos, Kaduna, and Kafanjan. Yet when it was attacked on January 30, the attack continued for 2 hours without any help arriving. As a Nigerian activist said to me when he pointed this out, quote, "You can see why this baffles us." The nearby village of Zamandabo was attacked just 2 days later, and during this attack, soldiers were stationed just a few hundred meters away, but they did not intervene. 11 people were killed. Some survivors even told us that there were signs that elements of the Nigerian military were collaborating in the attacks on their villages. Multiple survivors spoke of attackers wearing military uniforms. Senior figures in the Nigerian government, such as the late Dr. Obadiah Malafia and former Defense Minister Theophilus Danjuma, have claimed that the government is collaborating with these attacks. And it's noteworthy, as someone has mentioned in the chat box now, that on the same day as the massacre in Owo earlier this month, numerous witnesses reported seeing a Nigerian military helicopter participating in an attack on 3 Christian villages in Kaduna State. 32 Christian civilians were killed on that day. To what extent the Nigerian security forces or elements within them are actually collaborating with the Fulani militia attacks, I cannot say. But what is undeniable is that Nigerian authorities are persecuting journalists and whistleblowers who draw attention to this crisis. One of the people we met on our trip was the journalist and human rights activist Luca Biniat. Luca recently spent 90 days in prison in terrible conditions. His punishment for an article he wrote about the massacre of 38 Christians at Madamai in Kaduna State last September. This was the third time in 5 years that Luca has been sent to prison for reporting on violence against Christians. And Luca is not alone. Our joint report from March names 5 other journalists and whistleblowers from Kaduna State who were either imprisoned or forced into hiding after speaking out about these killings. So to sum up, not only is the Nigerian government largely failing to stop this violence, it is also persecuting journalists and activists who speak out about it. And there's considerable circumstantial evidence that elements of the Nigerian government are actually participating in these attacks. This is not taking place in a vacuum. The Nigerian government enjoys close relationships with both the United States and the United Kingdom, both of whom have spent billions of dollars over the past 2 decades to train, equip, and arm the Nigerian military, the same military that is standing by while Christians are being driven out of their homelands in the Middle Belt. This panel today is taking place in advance of the International Ministerial for Freedom of Religion or Belief in London. This ministerial is part of a high-profile campaign by the US and UK governments to promote religious freedom as a, quote, vital instrument of influence overseas, as a recent British government strategy document puts it. I think we have to ask, if the US and the UK are not using their close relationship with the Nigerian government to address the Middle Belt crisis, then what are all these religious freedom initiatives really good for? This is probably the single deadliest campaign of religious persecution in the world at the moment. Will it even be mentioned from the stage in London next week? As part of its efforts to promote international religious freedom, the United States maintains a list of countries of particular concern. Countries are added to this list for particularly severe violations of religious freedom. Last November, the US took Nigeria off of this list. It offered no explanation, no justification. It just took Nigeria off the list. But in a feeble concession to reality, the US decided to list the jihadist groups Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa as, quote, entities of particular concern, as if to say, Nigeria itself has no problems with religious persecution. These 2 groups are the problem. This rhetorical shift leaves a giant hole in the US's Nigeria policy, a hole the size and shape of the Middle Belt. As terrible as Boko Haram and the Islamic State are, they are not driving the ethnic cleansing campaign in the Middle Belt. And by all the evidence available to us, it seems that the US and the UK are willing to ignore this violence as long as their core interests in Nigeria are taken care of. The Middle Belt is the barometer by which we should measure the seriousness of the US and the UK's commitment to religious freedom in Nigeria. As long as our leaders are refusing to speak about it, or speaking about it with values-free rhetoric about climate change, intercommunal clashes, or complex causes, rather than calling it what it is, an ethnic cleansing campaign, a slow-motion genocide. As long as our leaders refuse to defend human rights whistleblowers like Luca Biniat when they are persecuted by the Nigerian state, they are not serious about ending religious persecution in Nigeria. When it comes to Nigeria, the clear demand of religious freedom activists must be stop the killings, save the Middle Belt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed to you, Joel, for your thoughts, the comments that you have just shared. You also raised some very important soul-searching questions, not just for us here on the call, but also for the government. So Joel also mentioned at the end of that visit, and that is to be on this call, this in a link after. And because, of course, we can't show you as many of the pictures from the trip as we would have liked to send you, as a benefit to you registering, we will send you some behind the scenes additional pictures. That visit happened in March of this year, and between March and now, I'm sure you're probably all aware of the several different escalating violent situations that have carried on. So states killed, set on fire by a traveling from the capital, Abuja, was bombed. People missing as of right now. The prelate of the Methodist Church of Nigeria was abducted and only released after a large ransom was paid, ransom money that is helping to fuel these situations and violence all the more. It would not have escaped your notice the tragedy in the southern part of Nigeria in Owo a few weeks ago. Ladies and gentlemen, we really do need to raise up our voices and help to save the disaster, the slow motion disaster, which is actually beginning to get even quicker than slow motion. And so that's why we're going to be turning over to yourselves to now hear some of your questions. And I'm going to invite everyone who has spoken so far to come back and form a bit of a panel so that you can perhaps field some of the questions from around the floor. We won't have enough time to take all of your questions. We have one or two things to say as we draw stereo coming up in London and what you can do to plug into that. So if my colleagues who were on that trip can please make a way back onto the screen. Let's start off with you, Hassan, and let's pick up on this sort of cloudy picture around the helicopter attack happening in central Nigeria at the same time as the attention of the world was in Owo, in the southern part, in the southwest part of Nigeria. What's your assessment of what was going on there? What can you tell us? What more clarity can you bring to the table? Hassan, if you make a start with that.
Yes, interestingly, this is not the first time villages and communities have been talking about sighting helicopters and either dropping ammunition in the thick forests in southern Kaduna, around Birnin Gwari to be precise. And this same event has been also reported in some villages in Plateau State. But consistently, they've just been waved off. Like the one that happened in Kajuri, in Dogonoma, for instance, during simultaneously with the attack in Owo. So, and what did the Kaduna State governor say? Oh no, it was a lie. The issue is, you see, the interesting thing here is the governor is not the pilot. He's not. I mean, he's not an Air Force officer. He's not a military. So, what we would have expected was to have asked the Air Force to make a comment. What are the air authority? What are the authorities saying? How do you have a plane in that area? Who detected it? Where is it coming from? But within a couple of hours, the governor just dismisses it, and so the victims now are left to continue to defend themselves. In other words, the victim is now accused of lying and so many other things. And we've had these issues again and again and again. And you see, the thing is, soldiers have been cited and reported in killings right from 2010 till today, either in Plateau State or in southern Kaduna or in Benue State. Now, has the government made a commitment? Has the army made anything to investigate, to bring out into light? Military officers have been arrested selling arms and dealing, and there is a huge black market. The point I'm making is, as much as the government continues to deny that, the victims in that place the Baroness Caroline Cox talked about Veronica, whose finger was chopped in Dogo Nomad. Interestingly, she returned to the village, and in that attack, she barely escaped. Yet again, the same village was attacked. And when I spoke to her on phone, she said she was running and the helicopter was shooting behind her. It was the helicopters that killed the 33 and not even the Fulani invading Islamist militia groups. So these are the things that are happening. And again, we keep asking the question, is this government serious?
Very, very, very good question that's resonating around the room and around the world. I can say that I lead the Peace and Social Justice charity here in the UK, PSJ UK. But there is also a PSJ Nigeria, and they've done quite a lot of field studies. They've engaged with a lot of victims of attacks. And as I was reviewing some of their reports in preparation for the ministerial next week, I was actually equally surprised to find several different instances where victims were talking about the fact that there was helicopters hovering during attacks. And you're right, Hassan, to say that the response of a government that is serious about doing stuff will be very different from what it is we're seeing on the ground at the moment. I'm going to move to a next question here, which is asking whether there's been actually any declaration of a jihad by the Fulani militants. Baroness Cox explained very well about the fact that there is a difference between just using the word Fulani generally. It's a very diverse group of people. There are Fulani Christians, there are Fulani Muslims who have nothing to do with the violence that is going on. But there are militants who generally tend to be Fulani, even though there are other militants who are not Fulani, as part of Nigeria's complex mix. But the question that this question is asking is, has a jihad been declared? Joel, would you like to take a bash at that?
I would not. I would like Hassan to take a stab at that.
Yeah, I would love to come in here. Now, when you look at, so again, I've been to several villages here. Now, when you look at the nature of the attacks, you look at the technically speaking, the rule of engagement. So in almost every or most of the villages in Southern Kaduna and in Plateau State, right? Certain times messages are sent to the communities and they are told we are coming to attack. You have to either convert to Islam or else you pay a ransom. So these are the things you hear again and again and again. Then the attack follows. And eventually, it's not even the issue of like it's said that they come in screaming Allahu Akbar. That's not even the issue. The issue is when you look at what essentially is a jihad. And when you see strategically in the villages, look at the areas that are attacked, the churches are attacked, the pastors are attacked, the religious areas. I mean, so a point is made. It's not a random attack to say, oh, well, a clash between herders and farmers. No, we're talking about a militant, or rather a strategic, defined, well-coordinated, village to village across the region attack. So to just dismiss it, we cannot say, like you rightly pointed out, that there's no formal announcement like either Boko Haram did or ISWAP did in this thing. But in the absence of the attack, even if it was not said on the social media, like Boko Haram would do, but you have messages that are being floated around to say, if you do not convert, this will happen, or if you don't convert, that will happen. I don't know what else you will call that. Because I think in the textbook definition, what people are looking for is to say, well, before you say it is a jihad, or before you say it is genocide, there must be this and there must be that and there must be that. Okay, I love the academics. The issue is the reality on the ground. Just simply say there are people that are being exterminated for who they are and for where they are, and yet there is so much debate and I don't know. It looks like we just want to meet some certain methodological or theoretical framework to be able to access and then accept that, well, this is happening before the government moves in. And if you ask my opinion, I would say these are just deflecting the real issues. Between January and now, nearly 1,000 people have been killed. Is that okay? Do we sit down and define whether it is a jihad or not before we stop the killings? And this, I think, where the matter is.
I wonder if we've lost Ayo temporarily. He's been having connection problems. Could I just add 2 very brief points to Hassan, because you speak obviously from massive first-hand experience. But when we visited so many of the villages and villagers who've suffered these attacks, they say that when many of the Islamist Fulani attack, they will use the language of jihad, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. They say that they're out to kill the Christians, get rid of the Christians. Now, I'm only reporting what I've heard from them, but I've heard it many times, and it does certainly resonate with the concept of jihad. And the other thing I would say, that the way that the Western governments, Britain and United Kingdom rather, and the US have tended to call these very, very tragic attacks tit for tat is a gross understatement of the reality of what we have witnessed, what Joel has described, Hassan, what you have described. It is far more large scale, far more systematic, and maybe has a far more systematic agenda than just tit for tat between Christian farmers and Fulani herders. It is an infinitely more serious situation than that. Just like to make that point.
Thank you very much, Baroness Cox and Reverend Hassan. In Ayo's absence, I'd like to recognize that Madam Bruce has her hand up, I believe, if you'd like to pose a question for us.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm wanting to speak because I think in a moment there will be a vote in the House of Commons, and so I'll probably have to disappear fairly rapidly. But I want to thank all the speakers. I heard you all. I just managed to join as you were starting, just before you started, Caroline. First of all, my tremendous and ongoing admiration for Caroline, a dear friend, and I do not know of anyone who travels as she does and is so faithful in bringing back the accounts and the messages from the grassroots, from where people are suffering. And it's very powerful. The stories that you bring, Caroline, are very powerful. And I'm going to come back in a moment to an opportunity for you to account some of those at the ministerial. Hassan John, my deputy special envoy, David Burrows, he sent his greetings. He had to leave to go home. As you know, he has 6 children and they've not all left home yet. So he greets you, and he tells me that you will be coming to the UK very soon, and you'll be here for a longer period than just the ministerial 2 days. So I am looking forward to meeting you. He is going to arrange it. Thank you so much for all that you do, and let us get together. Joel, that was such a powerful and authoritative presentation. I'm going to ask whether it's possible that you could actually send it to me in writing.
Of course.
If you can do that through Caroline, then I want to refer it to our Minister for Africa, Vicky Ford. It said so much that our ministers need to keep hearing. And I do want to encourage you. I want to encourage all of you. Nigeria is raised in the House of Commons. It was raised, I raised an urgent question about 2 weeks ago. Even this morning, we had a debate on freedom of religion or belief about the ministerial. Nigeria was a country raised, and I think I'm saying this more than any other individual country during that debate this morning. So be encouraged and keep speaking. I know it must seem very frustrating, but I do have a sense, I will put it no stronger than that, that maybe there are more ears hearing now than there have been for some time about what is happening in Nigeria. and I want to speak, if I may, about opportunities at the ministerial. Caroline, first of all, I've obtained an opportunity for you, as you know, to speak on a session on the second morning. It's called Inspiring Parliamentarians. Now, I think that's a wonderful title, because what it's meant to imply is how can we inspire other members of parliament in countries across the world to do what people like Caroline do, and our all-party parliamentary group, which of course is unique. There isn't another one like it in the world, working cross-party as we do. But actually, it's a very apt title for the Inspiring Parliamentarian of Caroline Cox to speak at. Use the opportunity, Caroline, I know you will, to talk about what you said today. Paint those stories. There's, however, a wider opportunity for everybody, because this ministerial will be live streamed and everyone can join. If you look, all you have to do is go on the gov.uk webpage for the ministerial, and that's giving information now about the sessions. There'll be invitations soon about the times, and you can join virtually and you can comment virtually. It will be an opportunity wherever you are in the world. So, for example, there's a session. There are several sessions when you could make your voices heard on Nigeria. There's one on atrocity prevention. There's one on FORB in times of conflict and insecurity. There's one on leaving no one behind. There is one, civil society as a driver for change, engaging the next generation, and then a closing panel discussion on reflections and the way forward. So lots and lots within those 2 days on the 5th of July. Really get stuck in there, because they will all be recorded and they will all be noted by Foreign Office officials. And we have coming to the ministerial, we have people from over 60 countries coming, and over half, around half, 30 of those are sending a government minister. So you will have government ministers in the building listening to those sessions. I encourage you. It's an interactive opportunity to get your voices heard, and I just want you to know how much I support you. Caroline will know, she will remember, before I was appointed the envoy, that I was one of those members of parliament who actually co-wrote the all-party group report on Nigeria that I know had an impact even in America. I think it influenced at the time that they're putting Nigeria on as a CPC. I am frustrated that it has now been removed, but I'm right behind you. Keep going. Use those opportunities at the ministerial and keep your voices up. And if you ever have an opportunity, Caroline, try to meet Kemi Badenoch, the Minister for Faith for the UK. I've recently been talking to Kemi. Her family originate from Nigeria, and I think it would be very helpful if you could try and get an opportunity to meet Kemi Badenoch. Her responsibility is for faith within the UK. Mine is an Envoys International, but obviously we have ministers for every country. But try to get a meeting, and AO, if AO's back on, try to get her an opportunity to meet with the Nigerian diaspora, because I think she's someone who is actually listening and concerned. So those are my contributions. The division bell hasn't gone, but I expect it to go any moment. So I will thank you all, and I look forward to receiving your report, Joel, and I'll send it to our Minister for Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Fiona, for your very kind words, and even more so for all of the work that you do behind the scenes. I can testify that since you've taken on this role, the area of attention and work that's gone on, both inside and outside of government, has significantly increase. And like Caroline, we definitely owe you a debt of gratitude. So thank you for your comments. Ladies and gentlemen on the call, obviously we've only been able to touch on a few things here. But as Fiona mentioned, there's so many sessions, both that you can live stream and connect to during the ministerial, but there's also so many fringe events that are being organized by ourselves, PSJ UK, other ones in conjunction with other civil society partners, which both HEART and CSI are a part of. So if you make your way onto the PSJ UK website, you will find a lot more information, and you would find links to the London FOP page, as well as the links to the gov.uk page, where a lot more information is available. And our team and so I think squeeze in one more question raised, waiting to go. We can, okay, well, let's hold on. Let's try and catch that. So why can't the West apply the Ukrainian approach, where local communities can be assisted to resist, since government has proved incapable to protect? And because the division bell hasn't quite gone just yet, Fiona, I'm going to throw that right back at you. As the only representative from government there. Have a quick bash at that before we wrap up.
There's a lot in that, and it's really reflecting the frustration that we've heard earlier. Why can't the authorities give more support to communities who are under threat so that they can defend themselves? I agree. It should happen. It should happen.
Yeah. Now, one thing I would say to you, Charm, and you see, what PSJ UK is bringing to the table is mobilizing the massive Nigerian diaspora that exists in the UK to come forward with not just our frustrations and our complaints, but to be able to come forward with practical solutions and policy ideas as to how to actually collaborate with governments, our various governments, as well as coming alongside to find solutions to some of this stuff. And just thinking about your question there, I can already think of something which some of our partners are trying to work up along those very lines. So please do make sure that you sign up to our newsletters, you get in contact with us. And on that note, I'm just really going to segue into what our call to actions are. For PSJ UK this evening, what we're really asking is that we are a sleeping giant, the Nigerian diaspora. And for starters, if we can all make sure that we are raising up our voices with our parliamentarians, we even can write to ministers in charge of various things on the PSJ UK website. So please engage with that. For HEART, you've seen the practical work that they are doing on the ground with the provision of education to people across the Middle Belt, to the education of those children. Well, you know, the children who are out of school today are going to become the bandits of tomorrow. So once again, we have opportunities to intervene by sponsoring one child, two child, sponsor a van if you can. If your company can sponsor multiple ones of these resource vans, then we want to be hearing from you. And Joel spoke very eloquently about the things that we ought to do. And CSI are raising a campaign to ensure that attention is refocused on Nigeria in the State Department, on Capitol Hill, and that Nigeria should be put back onto that country of particular concern list. So as we bring this meeting to a close, there will be a clip that we'll play that will remind you about the things that you can do. No longer are we in that place where we should just be complaining on WhatsApp, on social media, just be frustrated and annoyed about things. We can do something, each one of us, Nigerians and friends of Nigeria. And in answer to another question, which I know we didn't get to, there is a growing coalition, and I think Fiona mentioned this, of people who are not even necessarily coming at Nigeria from the religious persecution front. There's a growing band of people who are concerned. Now, it's important that we all come together and we all work together. So keep an eye on our various websites. The rest of the questions we didn't get to answer in this hour would obviously be featured on our social media pages. And please engage with us. Sign up for the various opportunities at the ministerial. But from everyone who were on that trip in central Nigeria, we bring you our thanks and we say good night to you. And yeah, please keep supporting this very vital work for Nigeria. Thank you so much. We'll let that clip play now.
Go to PSG UK website and navigate to campaigns, contact your MP. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and enter in your home postcode. Click Go. This will bring up the details of your MP and available templates for letters which you can choose from. Click on the template for the campaign you want to write to your MP about. This will populate the draft contents of the template into the writing area for you. Please have a read through the letter and feel free to edit any part of it to fit your preferred choice of words or expression. However, please keep it respectful and factual. At the bottom of the letter is the subject of the letter, which can also be edited, and space for you to add in your personal details. Most MPs require you to add your address so they can confirm that you are one of their constituents. If you would like to be kept informed about the progress of this campaign, please tick the tick box and proceed to send your message to your MP. Thank you for taking part and engaging your MP on these critical issues.